And welcome back to the kitchen. So tonight what I'm going to cook is the old Aussie favourite. Everyone that grew up in Australia, you'd probably have these before. They're rissoles with some vegetables, you know. But this one's got a twist. I'm going to show you now my gourmet version of these. I'll tell you what point is the minimum, and then we'll put in the gourmet mix. Okay, now before I get started I need to get my vegetables on. So what I've got here is a potato. I'm just going to cut that into 4 like that, and just remember this is for one, this is just for me, so you know, because it's just for me, there's water in here. I've already put the potato in. I'm going to put that onto the hot plate. I'm going to put it on warp factor 9. Okay, so I'm going to boil them with the lid on just till it gets up to the boil, and then when it gets up to the boil I'll take the lid off. I'll dial it back down by 2. So my highest level here is 9. That's why I say warp factor 9, because it's pretty hot. But I'm going to put it back down to 7. And when I do that, I set my timer for 20 minutes. And when I'm looking, while I'm cooking, I'm looking at the timer. Because I've got these other vegetables here, if we put them all in now, it's going to end up basically one big mush. And we don't want that, right? So what I do is I get my potatoes up to the boil, dial it down, set it at 20 minutes. So I'm going to put some pumpkin in, because what I'm doing is mashed potato, mashed pumpkin, and then we've got some snow peas and some cauliflower. I love these things. That's what I had in the fridge tonight, but I can tell you these are pretty well stable things of mine. So at about 15, you know, the clock's going down, at about 15 minutes I'm going to put my pumpkin in, and then at 7 minutes I'm going to put my cauliflower in, and then at 5 minutes I'm going to put my snow peas in. And once the timer finishes, everything will be cooked to perfection. Okay, how do I know that? I think it's because I have done this method with that timing about 2,557 times in my life. So I've sort of nailed it. Okay, I do this every night, so I know it works. I know that I'm going to be able to mash these and they're going to be cooked and blah 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 blah. So trust me on that. So the lid's going on, and this is going on to the hot plate. And away we go. Put the fan on. Okay, so I can, just for now, we'll put the veggies over here. So let's start. What I'm starting with is 500 grams of beef mince. Just beef, you know, that's all it is. I got about, I don't know, 100 grams, 150 grams, a few rashes of bacon that I've chopped up really small. I've got 1 onion, and as you can see I've sort of cut it really fine, because that's what you want in these. You don't want big chunks of onion. Well, I don't, because it'll also make it all fall apart. I've also got a clove of garlic in there that I've minced. Now, did I chop it like that? No, I didn't. What I did is I used this funky machine. It's awesome. You get them from Kmart. I think it costs $6. So it's that bowl. It's got a blade in there. You cut up your onion into little, you know, chunks sort of thing. Don't put the whole onion in, it won't work. And then once it's in there, you just pull the string, and you keep pulling the string. And what it does, it basically minces the onion and the garlic. I use it as well for the garlic. Okay, so that's a really handy little machine. I use this a lot when I'm doing different things. Anyway, that's what it is. That's how I got it so fine. So then we got some spices. Just mixed herbs. That's all it is. Nothing fancy. You just buy it from the store. Mixed herbs, salt, pepper. That's really the minimum. If you just want the minimum, that's it. Onion and garlic, mixed herbs, salt and pepper. Right? You can get by just with that. But if we want to oomp it up a bit, we want to have that oh my god moment when you first taste it, we start adding a few more extras. So, number one, tomato sauce. You can also turn these into burgers, like what Americans call burgers. You know, if you want to put these on the barbecue, I would use barbecue sauce, but for these I use tomato sauce, or whatever, barbecue, tomato, whatever you like. Dijon mustard. There's 2 tablespoons in there. 1 heaped for me anyway, tablespoon of Dijon mustard, which I love. Oh, sorry, half a cup of breadcrumbs. We just use that to fill it out a bit, give it a bit of texture. I wouldn't put that in with burgers, right? Don't put that in with burgers. And then of course my favourite, which I put in everything, is a bit of paprika. I've got 3 different types of paprika. Tonight I'm going to use the sweet smoked paprika. Why? Because I like it. Some Worcestershire sauce. I'm going to put some of that in as well. Maybe a couple of teaspoons. Just to lift it a bit. So that's basically it. As I said, this is the gourmet version. This is not the run-of-the-mill what Mum used to make for you on a Wednesday night. This is when you're having guests over, or you just want something that tastes absolutely awesome. Now, if you had been watching my other videos, a while ago I did a corned beef and I boiled it, in a lot of different, malt vinegar and water and stock and blah 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 blah. And I saved it, and I said in that video I'm going to save it. And yeah, I've used a lot of it, but I've still got 1 bag left. And what I do, as you can see, that I just put it into one of these bags, I freeze it. I took that out this morning so it would defrost naturally. And we're going to use that later to make our gravy, and we'll cover that later. So, and an egg. We use an egg to bind them, to hold them together, okay? And then some flour, which I'll show you in a minute, because we're going to dust these in flour. You don't do that for burgers, but you do it for rissoles, right? And it'll become apparent. So let's begin, shall we? Now, first of all, salt. I just guess. I think maybe a teaspoon or whatever, but I put that in first. Okay, bit of salt, bit of pepper. Again, this is to your preference. I'll put the recipe, I guess, in the description. So that's that. I will measure these out because I want almost a tablespoon. No, actually I will put a tablespoon. So yeah, that was a tablespoon of mixed herbs. Put our onion and garlic in. And I'll put the bacon in. Again, bacon's optional. I couldn't imagine it without it, but that's just me. Right, so as I said, at that point, that's basically a basic rissole, is that, right? But we're going to now lift it to the next level. So, don't you go away. We'll put our sauce in, just tomato. So this is ketchup. If you're in America, it's ketchup. We call it tomato sauce. You call it ketchup. As I said, you could use barbecue sauce if you wanted to. I didn't want to. I like tomato sauce. My Dijon mustard, which again, you notice I put this in a lot of stuff because why? Because it's awesome. And it may seem like this is a lot of stuff and it's going to overpower it. It doesn't. Once you start cooking this down, all these flavours really dial down. So don't think, oh my god, I can't eat mustard because it gives me heartburn. It won't, right? Now, hang on, my paprika. So I'm just going to put a teaspoon of this in. Not too much, just enough to give it a little bit of a lift. Love the stuff. Love it. Worcestershire sauce. We'll put 2 teaspoons in. There you go. Our breadcrumbs. And then finally our egg. You could beat that egg if you wanted to beforehand. I don't see the point. Yeah. So now I just get in there with my hands. But here's the important thing. When you're mixing this, be gentle. Don't squeeze it. Don't, you know, be vigorous with it. You just want to gently move it all around. Get everything mixed in nicely like that. As loosely as you possibly can with your hand. You really don't want to squeeze it. Because if you squeeze it and compact it, these will come out really rubbery, right? Hard, dense and rubbery. We don't want that. We want them sort of light, almost, you know, fall apart. As you put a fork through them, you just want them to break open. And so that's why I'm doing it like this. As I said, you could turn these into burgers if you wanted to and do them on the barbecue. No problem with that. When I do burgers, but I actually put a little bit of chili, you know, 1/8 of a teaspoon, just to give it a zing. You could do that for these if you wanted to, but I don't. Now, I'm not sure in America if you've ever heard of these. Hang on. So you probably heard that. That's my little kettle thing. It's just telling me that the water's boiled. So I'm going to set my timer for 20 minutes, right? As I said, I'll just keep an eye on that as I'm doing stuff, and then I'll add the different vegetables in at different times. So now we're ready to start making our rissoles. So just give ourselves a little bit of room. Leave it there. Now, use a very special tool. It's an old school ice cream scoop, and you'd be thinking, what the hell? Well, because I like to have things even Steven. Why? Because they're uniform, so I get the best mix, value for money, but more so because they're all going to cook at relatively the same time. I can remember in the old days, you know, I used to, like a lot of people, just do these by hand, and you'd have big ones and little ones, and you always have, like, you know, all these little ones left over at the end, and it's just not good. So that's why I use a ice cream scoop, and you can see it sort of already puts them into little balls. Not that we want a ball, but we do for now. If all goes to plan, I usually get about 9, I think, out of this. That's the other advantage of using a scoop. I know exactly how many I'm going to get. Now, while I'm doing this, feeding. How many of these would an average person eat? Well, let's imagine you're a tradie, you're on the tools all day, you're out in the hot sun, you come home, you're starving hungry. You'd probably knock off 4 of these with veggies. If you're a petite young thing, girl, you probably have 2. And someone like me that's average, or, you know, female, male, whatever, about 3 with the veggies. Okay, but you know, I'm getting a lot more. What was I thinking? You'll figure it out yourself. What I normally do actually is I have 3 for dinner, and then about half an hour later when I'm cleaning up, I'll knock one off and just eat it on its own. So I sort of do have 4 of them. Now, when you get leftovers, these things are awesome. You can either just heat them up again for tomorrow night's dinner, or you can crumble them up and put them onto a roll with some gravy. Absolutely magnificent. It's really up to you. And look at that. even Steven. If you did that by hand, there's no way you're going to get an even batch like this, okay? And I am going a bit faster than I normally would to show you guys. Okay, so that's that. Now what do? I'm just going to form them into little balls. We are going to flatten them out in the pan, but just for now we're just going to put them into a ball. Obviously you can make them bigger than this, you know, if you think I want a bigger one, that's fine. It's just going to take longer to cook. Rightio. Next thing we do, and this is what's different, this is what makes a rissole and not a burger, is we're going to flour these. We're just going to coat them in flour like that. Okay? Dust them. That helps create a crust on the outside, but it also helps hold them together a bit. It's much nicer. So I wouldn't recommend doing, making these without dusting them, drenching them first in flour. There's no seasoning in the flour. Normally I would season the flour, but I've got enough seasoning in the mix in there, so I don't need more seasoning. That one's a little bit little, but whatever. Yes. So keeping on our time, it's down to 14 minutes. Okay, do you remember what I said? When am I going to put the pumpkin in? Anyone? Anyone? 10 minutes. Cauliflower at 7. Snow peas at 5. And yes, I put them all in the one pot because it's just me. I'm just cooking for me. So I can put them all in the one pot, and I'll show you how I extract them and do that later. Take you through the process of preparing the vegetables, because you probably know how to do it, but we'll do it anyway. Also, when I had it all in the bowl before, sometimes if I'm having a barbecue, it's a similar process, right? But we don't do this. I would actually cover that in plastic, put it into the fridge overnight. It just lets all those flavours develop and get you a much nicer thing. And also the next day when the meat has been cooled, it's much easier to form into burgers. And I use like a ring and I press them in there and do it like that. So that's it. We've got them now dusted. So what I'm going to do now is wash my hands, get the pan ready, and I'll move the camera over. Right, so here we are over at the hot plate. So I've got my big pan I'm going to use. I've got it on a moderate 6. I don't know what that is on yours, but it's just a little bit above halfway. And I'm actually going to put it down to 5. The reason why is we're going to use the lid, which means it's going to cook more evenly. It's going to retain all the moisture. The last thing you want is dry rissoles. Disgusting, okay? So I cook these with the lid on. And if it was on a barbecue, I would literally have the hood down, believe it or not, if you want nice juicy burgers. So that's what I do. So we don't need it as hot because we've got the lid on, right? It's going to heat it up a bit. So now, start placing these on. I'm just going to fry them off. I'm using olive oil, and the reason why I'm using olive oil is I use vegetable oil when I want to get a hot burn, like roast potatoes and things like that. But for these, I don't want such a hot burn. I want it to be a bit more gentle. So as you can see, I'm just going to flatten them down a little bit. That just helps them cook quicker and more evenly, and it's easier to handle them. So now I'm going to put the lid on. And I'm going to do them for about 3 or 4 minutes per side. As you can see, I don't know if you can see that, but I've got my potato in. Been keeping an eye on that. It's now time to put the broccoli in. Not broccoli, what am I talking about? Cauliflower. Putting the cauliflower in. Anyway, we'll probably speed this bit up, I think, because for you guys it's probably boring as bat you know what. So, see ya. And these are about ready. What I'm going to do now is transfer these into this container. Hopefully you've got something you can put them into. So I'm just going to give them one more little... For some reason they're not holding together, and I think it's because the egg I used wasn't big enough. Probably should have used 2 eggs. Normally these hold together very well. But that's alright, it still tastes the same. It smells delicious, by the way. I'm not sure if you can see, but they've developed like a crust on the outside from that flour that we had on it. The thing with mince, like chicken, you really want to cook it properly. You don't want pink mince, okay? Because if you do, you get salmonella poisoning. That's just why I turned it one more time. With the lid on, I'm doing it at about 4 minutes each side. But because this pan wasn't hot enough, wasn't up to temperature, it's taking a little bit longer. But the next batch will be just 4 minutes each side. So what I do now is I just transfer them directly into here. Put the lid on. Keep them warm, and I'll do the next slide. So I won't record this, we'll come back after I've finished. Okay, oops, I nearly forgot to record this bit. So my veggies are in there with the lid on, just to keep them warm, but I want to do the gravy first, because we're going to pour that into the bowl where all the rissoles are. Unfortunately, I'm not sure why they all broke up this time. I think, as I said before, because the egg wasn't big enough. So basically, what I've got here is what I do for all my gravies. It's 30 grams of butter, 1/4 cup of flour. If it's a chicken recipe, I'll use chicken stock. If it's a beef recipe, I'll use beef stock. Okay? I'm just going to melt the butter and sort of mix it in with the flour, and you're thinking at this point you're probably going to think, oh my god, it's a disaster, but it's not. Okay, we just get all that stuff together. So always 2 cups for this mix. So I've got 2 cups of that lovely beef stock from the previous recipe, so I'm going to use that. Now you don't have to make your own stock. You can just buy the stock, you know, from the supermarket and use that if you want to do this. Or you can just make, you know, Gravox gravy out of a packet and just do it like that. But as you know, I like to take it to the next level. So it probably isn't hot enough yet. But we're just going to keep whisking this until all those lumps break up. So as I said, this is good for turkey, chicken, whatever, duck. 30 grams of butter, 1/4 cup of flour, and 2 cups of whatever stock you want to use. And oops, when you taste this, it tastes like what you get in a restaurant. You know, compared to your packet mix, you know, your Gravox or whatever, Borox, whatever, you know, one of those packet ones. They're okay when you're eating at home alone and you're in a hurry. I use them, of course I do. But they're nowhere good as this. This is like I said, this is restaurant quality stuff. So, since we went to all the trouble making gourmet rissoles, we should make gourmet gravy to go with it. So now what I'm going to do, as you can see, I don't know if you can see, but all the lumps are gone now. All those nasty lumps that were in there before, they're all gone. As it heats up, they just dissolve. But it's important that you keep whisking to get those lumps out. And if you can't get them all out, you can always put this through a strainer later, right, and then into a jug or something if you want to. So now I just need to get it up to the boil. Don't want it boiling, but I just want it to start bubbling. And then a magical transformation takes place and it just turns into gravy. I'm just testing it. I didn't think so, but I just tested to make sure in case I needed seasoning. Oh, it's bloody nice, mate. I did a roast pork shoulder a couple of week ago or something. I used this same stock, that, you know, for that, and oh, delicious. So I knew it would be perfect for this. Oh, and a brisket as well. I did a beef brisket, like pulled, you know, and stringy and everything. I used this stock for that, which was really nice. That's a slow cook, you know, geez, it was like 4 or 5 hours in the oven, but it just falls apart. It was just unbelievable. Okay, nearly there. And back to normal speed. Okay, I'm not sure if you can see, we're just starting to get little bubbles showing. That's exactly where I want it. It's the right consistency. So I'm going to turn it off. So now what I'm going to do is just pour it directly into the bowl and cover all the rissoles. Again, this is my own little way of doing it. You don't have to do it like this. I just prefer to. Now this will stay quite hot because we've got it up to the boil. The rissoles are still warm as well. That's going to stay quite hot. Put the lid on until we're ready to serve, so there's no dramas about that. So what we can do now is our veggies. So just got to move the camera and I'll show you. Okay, now for some of you that aren't my children who I do these videos for, this might be sucking eggs. So you might not want to watch it. I don't mind. You can skip to the end. For everyone else, this is how I do my mashed pumpkin potato. So the first thing I do is just get butter. About, I don't know, a couple of teaspoons, I just guess. Now I'm just going to use my spoon. I'm going to take out my potatoes. Like that. Then with a fork, I just start mashing it, just to break it up. Now you can see how soft they are and easy to break. Told ya, those timings are perfect. Okay, now I'll put some salt in. How much salt? I've got no idea, I just guess. Over years of doing it, I guess about a quarter of a teaspoon, maybe. Give that another mix. Now finally, the tricky bit for newcomers. Milk. We add some milk in. How much? Again, experience tells you to always put in a little bit if you're unsure to start with, because you can always put more in but you can't take it out. And you know, I put the right amount in where I thought I want, and that's only because I've done it 4 million times. In the early days I used to put way too much milk in, end up with potato soup, right? And that's when I realised, just put a little bit in, mix it, put a little bit more in, mix it, until you get to the right consistency. So that's what I like it about that consistency. I'll just have a little taste. Perfect. Okay. Just put that there. Normally I'd wash that bowl up and just reuse it. But since this is the one we had the meat in before, cleaned it, I'm just warming it up. I'm going to do the pumpkin. Same as we did before, put some butter in. And then I just fish out the pumpkin. Like that. And I'm not going to put salt in this one. I like to use pepper. And even sometimes when I'm feeling adventurous, I put a little bit of nutmeg in as well. That's an option. But this is how I normally do it. So just butter and pepper. That's my preference. Salt, a little bit of salt on these veggies. A lot of people put salt in their water. I don't like to do that. Like that. And then we put a little bit of, just a little bit of butter in with them as well. Like that. And that's it, we're done. We're ready to plate up. So without further ado, I'll move the camera and we'll plate up. So here we are, ready to plate up. So I just like to use a big spoon. As I said, these sort of disintegrated a bit on me, which doesn't normally happen. So I'm just going to put them in there first. It smells amazing. It's hard to tell how many, because they're all broken up. Doesn't really matter. That'll do. Tastes fantastic, really do. That paprika, for me anyway, my palate, the paprika really sets it off, really gives it that really good flavour. These are classic, traditional veggies. I grew up with this, mashed pumpkin, mashed potato, and beans or peas or something like that. But on this occasion, I'm using cauliflower and snow peas. I've added some salt and butter to them, just because it's naughty. Okay? You don't have to, but I want it to taste fabulous, so I do. So there you have it. That is my gourmet rissole recipe. Very hearty meal, not that hard to do, not that time consuming really once you understand what you're doing. Yeah, so give it a try, and until next time, bon appetit.